I'm Rick Parkhill. I'm the director here at Brand Storytelling, and I'm delighted to be introducing today's panel. This is number 8 in our Elevate speaker series, and you use that term. We save the best for last, and I know these have all been pretty good, but we got
There
some.
must be someone after us.
This is the last one. You guys are bad in cleanup. So, listen, today's conversation is about the intersection of marketing and entertainment, and we've got the right people here to talk about it today. This intersection seems to be getting a little congested these days, and push the metaphor, you got to watch out for head-ons here in this intersection. So, these guys are going to tell you how to be careful. So listen, this is Jae Goodman and John Kaplan. They're co-founders of Superconnector Studios. If you've been paying attention at all, you've been seeing what these guys have been doing for the last year. I think the company's only a year old, isn't it, guys?
18 months.
You've done a hell of a lot in 18 months. Attracted some great clients like LVMH and AB InBev. I'm just going to let people know that this new adventure is the extension of Goodman's career, whose last venture, the agency Observatory, garnered 3 Fast Company World's Most Innovative Company nods in a row in 2020, 2021, and 2022. You probably heard of some of the Emmy and Cannes-winning brand content shows like Chipotle's Back to the Start, Netflix and Doritos Live from Upside Down, and other initiatives such as Nike Waffle Iron Entertainment, which Jae conceived of and launched. And he's paired up with his longtime collaborator from CAA days, John Kaplan, who's a marketing and entertainment producer and brand entertainment innovator. So terrific to have you guys. And who better to interview these two than one of the most prolific reporters in the business right now, which is Lucia Moses. If you need to Google her and look at all the articles that she's written over the last year to follow all of the great stuff that she's reporting on. So I'm going to turn my video off here. Go ahead, Jae.
No, that's Mike, whose last name I cannot pronounce, Puventz. Please mute.
Okay, sorry. Mike happens to be my partner, Mike Puventz. I think he just got off a plane in Park City. Nice to have you there, Mike. Okay, everybody. I'm going to go away, let the 3 of you talk. All of you who are in the audience right now, please, comments, questions, post them in the chat. We'll try to get to them at about 20 to the hour. And when we do bring you on, you can turn your audio and video on and join the conversation. So take it away. I'll see you back here in a little while.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks so much, Rick, for the great intro. And John, Jae, it's great to chat with you. We've all had many conversations before, and yeah, no need to introduce these guys. They speak for themselves. And you've been making a lot of headlines yourselves in the past year with companies like LVMH and AB InBev that you're working for. You do a lot of other things as well. Management consultancy and consulting and help with consumer brands, match up with celebrity talent. But we're gonna keep the focus on brands getting into entertainment. And what do brands need to know? And like Rick said, we'll take some questions at around 20 minutes to the hour. So tee them up, drop them in the chat. So we're going to talk about like the very tactical on the ground stuff that you folks who are listening want to know. I guess to start with, Jae and John, maybe you can take this one at a time. What stage are companies in when they come to you, when they approach you, and what's the most common question you get from brands?
John,
why don't you start?
Well, actually, I'm going to throw it to Jay only because I think we have a great quote from one of our former clients, DJ at Nike, who gave a great answer on this when we spoke last time. Why don't you tell the story real quick?
Well, in terms of advice, so we'll take them in reverse order of the way you asked them, and or maybe it's in yours. So the piece of advice, we were doing a session 2 Cannes Lions ago about a similar topic, not surprisingly. And that was the last question in the Q&A, you know, in the really large audience in one of the auditoriums there. And DJ Van Hameren, who was the longest standing chief marketing officer in Nike's history, he just retired. The Olympics is kind of his last thing. And if you haven't seen what they're doing at the Pompidou, check it out. As far as ways to roll out of Nike, it's a pretty good one. So I made eye contact with DJ just as that question from the audience came in. And he signaled me like, hey, I'll answer that. And when the CMO of Nike offers to answer a question instead of us, we hand him the mic. And he said one word: patience. That entertainment is not like everything else we as marketers can set into a 1, 3, and 5 year plan, and can plan our brand over time and sales overnight, and can plan around calendar events, whether it's something like Prime Day that just happened, or those things that we know happen every year like holidays, or every 4 years like World Cup or Olympics. Entertainment moves on its own timeline. And that timeline is usually not that which you would like it to be, especially if you're not paying for the content. And our model with Waffle Iron is not to pay for the content, or at least do so only rarely, usually when we need some measure of control on the creative or the timing. And so he came back to it and said, be patient or don't, meaning don't do it if you're not going to be patient, because you'll only find yourself frustrated. In terms of when companies come to us, John, you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, I think that this has obviously become a very hot space. Lucia, you on your own right have been writing about this now more frequently than we've seen, you know, the industry focus on it in the last couple of years. And so the result of it, there's a lot of interest, which is why brand storytelling exists and other platforms. The truth matters that oftentimes there's a curiosity because they recognize that some of the things they're doing aren't working as well as they once did before, and see this as a space that brands that they admire are innovating in and want to be like. And so they oftentimes have a lot of questions out of the gate of like, how do we actually engage? Like, what is the process to go from having something that we think is interesting to actually on screen? And then once it's there, what do we do with it? How do we support it? How do we play a role in it? And so there's often a lot of education that takes place right in the beginning to understand where they are in their own journey around this. And then for us to really be very practical very quickly about like, okay, now let's tell you how it's actually going to get done. And so we pride ourselves on our relationships, which is why we've been in this game for so long, and try to keep the people closest to us. And so oftentimes we go from the philosophical to action as quickly as we can, which allows us to have proof points in the marketplace and not speculate about where they could go. Instead of, let's just show them how to do it.
So related question, what's the number one misperception that they come to you with?
That they can do one thing and do that one thing well, and then have a proof point that brand entertainment works. So we see brand after brand go all in on the documentary that they've always wanted to make about themselves. Or worse, that a production entity, usually a production entity, sometimes a manager, sometimes a manager producer, brings to them and said, this is the thing, and it's totally going to sell in the marketplace. All you have to do is give me a few $1,000,000 to make it. And there's a lot of that going on right now, which is really challenging. But, you know, and I see there's some pretty sophisticated people here. We know some of them by name, who you know, don't fall prey to this. But back to your first question, or one of them, we get a lot of incoming from people who made that mistake, from companies who made that mistake. And we get asked either A, if we can help fix it, which of course we try. Hey, I spent $4 million making this thing and nobody wants to distribute it. What do I do? It's pretty hard for us to be helpful then. But sometimes, for example, we can get it into another producer's hands who has a take on the footage that's been shot and edited already that can re-edit it and maybe re-edit it into something that's appropriate for the marketplace. So we had something like that at Waffle Iron where we spent $250,000 on something that someone else had made and couldn't sell. And then the re-edit actually did sell around the world. But that's really the exception, not the rule.
I think that idea of like the one shot into the marketplace though is a really good point. Because you look at any other traditional entertainment producer who goes out there, and if they had to base their business on having a hit right out of the gate, they'd be out of business tomorrow, even the most sophisticated, most accomplished ones out there. So we tend to try to explain that there's a development, slate process to this. Some things are for this year and some of things are for 4 years from now, and really understanding what their timelines are so that they line up with what they're trying to accomplish internally, but also being realistic about the marketplace, because a Netflix or an Amazon or Apple have their own point of view also about when things should come out. And frankly, we rely on them to understand the marketplace as well, to know when the audience will be there for this particular type of content. And that comes down to the creative control aspect that Jae alluded to before, in terms of how involved a brand is going to be in the process of the making versus the supporting suggestion. And we advise them across the board on all that stuff.
So that, to that last point, that assumes that they want Netflix or an Apple to buy their film. But some brands don't necessarily have those aspirations, right? So how do you help them figure out where they should be on that continuum? Should they try and sell it to Netflix? Should they try and just, make it themselves and put it on YouTube? Should they try and, put paid media behind it and put it on Roku or something? How do you advise them on those things?
We have charts on top of charts that describe the spectrum, and it all comes back to the same thing that everything comes back to in marketing. What's the strategy? And so we'll look at what the overall marketing strategy is. We'll look at what the content strategy is as a subset of that, and that's content across all forms of media. And then we will look at the spectrum of what one can do when creating original entertainment. And you're right, for some who have a great, highly engaged social following, we did something at Observatory. One of the last things I did there with Old Navy. Old Navy has an incredibly engaged digital community, primarily, as they'll put it, because their rewards program is exceptional. And their client base tends to rely on their rewards program. They give great value through it. And so because their open rate on emails is so high, because their response rates to promotion are so high, Old Navy was really confident that if they launched a piece of content through that they would get the level of engagement they needed with exactly the people they wanted to reach coming into back to school. And so for them, the strategy was definitely, then let's not sweat getting this thing distributed elsewhere. If we do, or we want to put it on YouTube with some paid media behind it, fine. It was something we did with Kenan Thompson and worked with Broadway Video on. The type of thing we could have tried to turn into a show format and sell, but strategically and tactically, it didn't make sense. So, and it was, I think Old Navy would suggest it was highly successful on exactly the KPIs we put in place beforehand, which was, again, open rates, completion rates, and whether people move beyond that into other parts of the loyalty program.
John, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that was a great answer.
Says my partner. Thank you.
Since you mentioned, KPIs and things like that, we know that branded entertainment can still be a tough sell in the C-suite. So what do you hear from brands when they come to meet with you, when you're advising them? What is their level of understanding about what those KPIs realistically can be?
Great question. I would start by answering, it's not an accident that I'm also the board chair of FE Worldwide, and that the standard bearer for marketing effectiveness globally. I think last time I checked, we're in 150 countries. I made personally, and we as a company, therefore, have a really strong commitment to marketing effectiveness, because doing above the funnel work. And increasingly, I think maybe entertainment could be considered upper funnel, but really it's kind of above the funnel if you're doing real entertainment work. The attribution at upper funnel, let alone above the funnel, has sucked as long as there's been a funnel. Attribution in television advertising is terrible. It's 50% on a good day. Even that is typically as reported by a third party, say Nielsen. Yet we've all kind of made our peace with the crappy attribution in television. So what the first thing we try to do is set the baseline with how great is your attribution model for what you're doing at the top of the funnel now? What does your efficiency and effectiveness in your television advertising look like year over year for the last 10 years? Well, we know what it looks like. Television advertising has become less efficient and less effective over the last 10 years, year over year. You can set your watch by it. So what if we only spent the inefficiency that you've lost or created over the last decade? What if we just used that as an innovation fund? And then through the course of that, work with third parties. I see Kevin Keane on here. There are lots of great companies out there who can help you build an attribution model and a measurement model for your brand entertainment initiatives. And that's obviously, if it isn't obvious by my canned response there, that's something that our management consultancy counsels all the time and then puts into place.
And I would just add that try to, in the very early days, figure out together what those KPIs are. And that's because for some of them, it is they want to make money off entertainment, right? Like that may be a KPI for them. Others are no desire, actually. It's a rounding error. It doesn't matter at all to them. They're trying to drive culture and they may have a sales initiative that's tied back to it. But just deciding what those things are up front so that you can be judged on them collectively is in it. And then, you said before, some clients may, not all clients want to be on Amazon or Netflix or this. I've yet to hear one that doesn't, but overall, that's part of it too, which is that when you take something to market, as a producer, regardless of what the construct is of where the idea came from, ultimately the market will judge you. And so there are plenty of times where we say, we think it's great, and our production partner thinks it's great. Let's go to market and test our theory. And we hope it sells. But there's plenty of people go to market every week with projects that don't sell, and that's okay too, as long as you're in the game and you're playing it along. And so you have to be prepared that there will be passes, but ultimately you have to have a lot of swings at this in order to go find those true diamonds. And people talk about Barbie all the time, and it comes up in every conversation with us. And I only bring it up here, not because I think it's actually a really bad parallel for the rest of this, but because we worked with the company for a long time and we saw several incarnations of that project that almost came to market. And the reality is the miracle of it is really about how ultimately control was released in order to actually allow the producer in this to build something that feels of the caliber that it's gotten its due on. And so I think it's very much about understanding both who your partners are and also what your end goal is in terms of keeping everything caliber and high level, because the market will judge you.
I get nervous saying this. My face just got hot thinking about it, but I got borderline yelled at by two Mattel CEOs in a row, Bob Eckert and Brian Stockton, may Brian rest in peace, because they were frustrated that we couldn't get the Barbie movie made. And the reality is we probably could have gotten it made, but the rights were sitting with production partners or talent that didn't feel right for the brand. And our counsel at the time was wait till you get the rights back and then find the right producer. Somebody sold the rights to so-and-so, and that's probably not going to be the movie you want to make. And again, Brian, who's a great guy, and we became like go out to dinner friends, but quite literally pounded his fist on the table and said, "Where's my Transformers? Why can't it be Barbie?" And the reality was, eventually it was. And I wish Brian had lived to see it, because I think it was better than any of us had ever imagined.
Wait, so what was that Barbie movie going to look like under that iteration? I'm
Well,
curious.
I'll say this is public, and I'll say
It's
it
going to be
publicly.
like Killer Barbie or something?
Well, no, look, I'm going to say it publicly and probably live to regret it, but because I really like this person's work. But the rights were sitting with Amy Schumer, and Amy Schumer's brand of comedy was not necessarily aligned with where Barbie was globally as a brand in that moment. And in our opinion, it would have been jarring. And that was also the opinion, much more importantly, of the marketing leadership at Mattel at the time. So there was a bit of dissonance between where Barbie was in global popular culture, where the brand was, and the brand wasn't ready to make the leaps that ultimately, thank goodness, Greta and Noah had it make.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, how do you two divide up the work you do?
John does most
Good
of it.
question. I mean, look, I think the nice thing about our partnership is that we have now worked together for so long in different incarnations. And when we decided to start this company together, it really came out of the notion that we thought we could bring all the experience we had in these different roles as managers, as producers, as creative directors, and people who led this within house at an agency like Creative Artists Agency and other White and Kennedy, other places. And ultimately, what we came to was that we really wanted to be true partners with our clients and not just be purely service providers and be on the hook both financially and from a responsibility standpoint on par with them, so that if they failed, we would fail too. But if we succeed, we're going to go along the ride together. And that is the model of how we engage with our partners today. And I think there's this misnomer that people think of brands sometimes as buyers, in terms of like they've got shows, they want to go sell them. We 100% see them as partners, producing partners, and helping to make things come to life. And Jae and my individual experience, I come from an entertainment background before I found my way into the brand world. He was leading some of the biggest agencies at Publicis back in the day. And when we got to Creative Artists Agency, both of us had this desire to take our sort of entertainment experience and marketing experience and try to find new innovative ways for those worlds to work together without knowing each other at all. And so after a decade plus at CAA, I think we've been playing at the highest level of pop culture with the best colleagues who are really running, every day I'd see things in the media that were representative things I'd heard in a boardroom 10 minutes ago or last week that were changing culture. And so us taking all those learnings and no longer being necessarily the creative engine of saying, we're going to write the script, we're going to come up with the project, but finding the best storytellers to actually work with, people who we admire, who are Oscar award-winning producers and directors, and really looking to them to say, what can you do with this? What do you want to do with this to go make something out in the world? And I think, again, back to you, Lucia, in terms of the interest in this space, whereas a decade ago, I don't know that Brian Grazer and Ron Howard would be calling us weekly about projects that we were thinking about doing. They're actively involved with us in this, and so are a dozen other A-list production, producer, writers, directors, talent, et cetera, who are all interested in participating in the brand world now. And so it's an exciting time to be in this space, and our respective skill sets, on our best days, we think complement each other a lot, but we're a pretty good sounding board for each other to know how those worlds of entertainment and marketing, really the learnings from them, and then moving forward, how we can actually bring that to actually game a bit.
So speaking of the producers, you mentioned Imagine. I mean, they've been in this game a really long time, but there are a lot of newcomers. They're seeing the money. They need that money to make their projects. So they're all coming out of the woodwork and hitting up brands. What should the producers know when it comes to engaging with marketers?
Great question. I'm waiting for another question to maybe give this answer, but I'll just start with it, which is every once in a while I get a little frustrated with the newcomers, most of whom are showing up looking for money for their projects. And I will try to turn that frustration positive, as my longtime partner, John, suggests to me. My life partner, Jae Goodman, also suggested to me. So I'll try to go on LinkedIn and list as many great partners as I possibly can think of in like 90 seconds. Because there are a lot of great production companies, Imagine, Hello Sunshine, Hooray, lots of others at the top of the list who are really great at working with brands. The biggest misperception among the newcomers is that brands have lots of money, and that money is there to get producers' pet projects made. things that wouldn't otherwise sell. And there's a total strategic misalignment there. And unfortunately, many producers in Hollywood became producers in Hollywood not only because they have great ideas and they built great connectivity, but because they're great salespeople. Hollywood is a very, very small community, about the size of a large public high school in terms of the number of people who can actually say yes to something, actual decision makers. And some of the people in that high school sized community got there because they're really great in a room. And that doesn't mean that when they step into that boardroom with a brand and they pitch them on this movie, as I said before, that's totally going to sell, or this series that's totally going to sell, or is going to blow up your YouTube channel, because you're right, Lucia, not everybody wants to, sell to the marketplace. There's a lot of one and dones. And so the number one thing we say to producers, to answer your question, is look at the case studies of the producers who came before you, who are really working well with brands. Understand what it means to be a producer of brand entertainment, both words. When to digress, but also maybe answer a different way, when we launched Entertainment Lions at Cannes and kind of laid out the tenets for it, it was like, okay, number one, is it great? It's got to be Cannes Lions quality. Number two, was it created in an entertainment format first? Meaning no long ads. Don't give us the 3-minute version of your ad and put it on YouTube and call it a short film that's brand entertainment. But then number three, it's not entertainment for entertainment's sake. It's called brand entertainment. So how does this entertainment promote the brand values or the direct business of the brand behind it? And we had to check all 3 boxes. Had to be great, had to be an entertainment format, had to promote the brand, or it doesn't win a line. And I think that is the advice that ultimately we give to producers who are coming into the marketplace. I just got very thirsty.
I like that. Don't give us the 3-minute version of your ad. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have to think about what are those brands' values and communicate that in some way.
That's why Nike's so good at this. They're so crystal. I know they're having a rough moment right now, but they're so crystal clear on who they are that whether they're expressing it through an Instagram post or a 90-minute film, they know. They just know. They feel whether it's Nike or not, whether it comes back to their values, the 5 questions they always ask themselves and answer. Not every brand is that crystal clear on who they are. And that's actually an exercise that our management consultancy will occasionally do, which is, hey, can we get really deep into the core of your brand? Who's your most trusted agency partner? Who's your absolute best strategic planner at your longtime agency? Can we sit with them and really make sure that we understand the brand and that you understand how, therefore, those values might manifest in entertainment? Let's make sure we get to a whiteboard and all agree before we go make a movie.
I'd only add to that based on what I was saying before, just we really try now to our ultimate goal here is to have more people make better things that we can all aspire to. And so if you look at our call sheet from yesterday, we had 3 marketing agencies who were calling us to help them help their clients do this. We had 3 of the streamers yesterday we spoke to about individual projects, but also who are asking us to help them figure out how to innovate, to actually work with brands. And then, of course, we've got production companies that are both desiring to understand the same questions you're asking right now, like how do we really do this? And then, of course, we have our marketing partners overall who are, of course, trying to innovate across the board on every level. And those ones, we say call anytime.
Yesterday was a day, and that's like half of what yesterday was.
What's the state of play with the platforms? Some of the big ones, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, they're making moves in this space. They're heavying up. They're leaning in, whatever you want to call it. And brands are speaking to them. How do you describe, the state of play these days there?
It's a really dynamic moment. which we see as a net positive and a net opportunity for brands. So, taking them one by one, Netflix with the ad platform's doing what it's doing. Clearly, that's not enough for the stock price. Their brand partnerships team is A++ and has done so many wildly innovative things. I don't just say that because they were a client for a long time. They just did. We had nothing to do, for example, with the Stranger Things and Coke stuff or Stranger Things and Eggo stuff. And it was just so natural, it worked so well. So that team has been doing great work for a long time. I think what we'll start to see there is probably a further leveling up. Nike just sold them a movie at Sundance, the Sue Bird documentary. So they're working really well with brands in multiple ways. By leveling up, the suggestion is, and we have no inside information, this is just a guess, but they'll start actually connecting the dots more actively, would be our guess. And through our relationships with LVMH and AB InBev and others, we're actually trying to drive that. Amazon, by design, is a really siloed company. But we're seeing more and more there, them finding ways to work across the silos as well. And they're big advocates for brands on the platform. When we talk about Hulu, it's probably best to talk about Disney. I would suggest the very top of that company is really thinking hard about multiple ways. They haven't necessarily put the infrastructure or the org in place yet, but we're really confident that whether you're working directly with Hulu or working at the higher level there, that will come to fruition pretty quickly. Warner Brothers Discovery, this will be the second thing I maybe regret saying. Sorry, John, but they're a little challenging. It's a little hard to figure out who to call at Warner Brothers Discovery right now. I imagine they'll fix that. But it's a bit challenging. I don't know who did I leave out, John?
Apple.
Oh, Apple just hired Mike Lewinsky, who's awesome. Our colleague at CAA, but he'd be awesome even if he wasn't. And really incredibly sophisticated and smart and innovative. So it's a great sign that Zach and Jamie and the team at Apple are now investing in clearly higher level brand partnerships. You wouldn't bring Mike Lewinsky in to do block and tackle integration deals.
But we try to be, on all those fronts, we try to be useful to them also in terms of bridging these divisions and explaining to them like how they could work better together around and trying to find projects that make a difference to each individual division so that they can really own a piece of it as we go forth. And we have a couple of those things that we'll announce pretty soon.
Sorry, I got to go. I've got Amy Schumer on line 1 and David Zaslav on line 2.
I just want to prompt people to drop questions in the chat if they have them. So, and we'll get to them soon. You didn't mention Paramount. That company's kind of in disarray right now. Does that mean, bad time to approach Paramount?
Well, look, we think dynamism is good. We think if we come in with a great opportunity to do something innovative with LVMH or AB InBev or again any of our other clients, those things are magnets. And then we get the right room. We'd like to think in some ways our relationships also create a bit of engagement. And so no, we've spoken to Skydance multiple times in the last 3 weeks. From the moment they would not admit anything was finally going to happen to the moment it did happen. So no, we don't necessarily find that one challenging right now, although they're quite busy.
Right. I'm curious, is dealing with how is dealing with the newer companies, the newer folks, Apple, Netflix, maybe even Hulu, Amazon, how is that different from the old broadcast model and dealing with those those legacy TV companies?
It's a great question. You want to take that, John?
Yeah. I mean, look, by the nature of being innovative companies that are also connected to technology on some basic level, the difference when we used to walk into Fox or ABC, and we have some good anecdotes about those moments, you typically come in and you'd have a programming meeting, or you coming in the other door and you were actually going through ad sales. And at some point, someone would decide, that sounds great. And they'd call the other division because they didn't want to get in trouble. And so we had multiple moments, especially at Fox back in the day, where we would come in and basically have a green light on a project, and then someone said, "Oh, hold on. We got to make sure that this has already got a media buy attached to it, otherwise we can't do it." And so that felt like again very uninnovative. But what's different now is that especially in Amazon or Netflix and the more sort of global properties platforms, they understand how the world is changing, and they understand that the way that they're going to be valued from the marketing perspective is that they want more in-depth integration across the platform. And so the idea that you're going to silo it and say, only if you do X are we going to do something with you, like, it's done. So that's my answer.
Got it. Jae, anything you want to add to that?
Nope, I was in those rooms and have those anecdotes, but I'm in enough trouble from what I've said. I'm just gonna bite my tongue.
Somehow I think you like being in trouble, Jay.
I
You
like
do-
interesting conversations, so sometimes they need to be provoked.
Yeah. Hey, Lucia, we've got a comment we have Kaki Oron. She's the Chief Creative Officer at the North
Hi,
Face.
Jackie.
She's got, Kaki, go ahead, turn your video on and join us here. She's got, obviously, North Face, a prolific producer of brand content, and Kaki sits at the helm of that. So Kaki, come on.
Jackie and I share Warren Miller heritage too. So
Yeah, right on. Hey guys.
hi.
Hi. Um, so thanks for joining. This is awesome. Super keen to hear everything that's going on. My question is about, like, I guess one of the biggest challenges of creating a sustainable entertainment model at a brand is this given of ever-changing leadership and strategies, specifically at the C-suite level. So, and in this entertainment proposition that can take many years to take shape, no matter what your defined ROIs are, how are you navigating this pretty consistent and almost assured hurdle as advisors to brands?
That is a great question, and from your lips to the CMO tenure, it's really challenging. So, for example, and I'll answer the question, but for example, the 25-year CFO of Chipotle is retiring. And I couldn't get my fingers to the keyboard quickly enough to post and thank him, who I have never met in a dozen years, worked directly with Steve Ells, who founded the company, Mark Crumpacker, in a lot of ways, the godfather of CAA marketing in terms of the opportunities he gave us. Chris Brandt and Stephanie, who then took over marketing, also, like, amazing. I never met the CFO in all that, having spent tens of millions of dollars creating and distributing content for them. But I know for a fact that the CFO either A, trusted his marketing team enough to let them do their thing, or B, somehow had a fundamental belief that they couldn't just be another advertiser and compete in an industry that was spending so much more than they were. I think Taco Bell outspent them 70-1, at least when we started. So I think ultimately it's really spending the time, or at least identifying, because again, I never met that CFO, identifying the full C-suite, as you put it, not just the maverick CMO who wants to try something, and really understanding the dynamic of the C-suite overall, so that when you sell something in, recognizing half that C-suite's not going to be there when whatever Waffle Lion's first movie goes. They didn't have a lot of turnover, but pick it. I think, I don't know if there's advice in there so much as awareness that if you've got a maverick client doing one thing, chances are it will fall prey to turnover. But if you're working with someone who's in an organization that supports them, you probably got a much higher chance for long-term success.
I'll add to that, which is, because I know from some of our conversations too, is that, look, at the end of the day, like, this is a human-based business, and so we sort of track stars and we go with them for a while. I mean, we've been working with Mickey Urinal at TIAA since she was at eBay, then the Bonobos, even at was it Trulia, and Zillow, and so like we have a 25-year relationship with her. She's been a client of ours 3 times. She's awesome, and she took swings, like things that she probably was going to get fired on a lot of times, and that's kind of part of it too, which is that your leadership is going to change over, but if you're doing things, you may get fired too, but guess what? Like the world's changing and you got to try things. And so I think that's part of it. The other thing is like we really do believe that relationships matter. It's like the core tenet of our business overall. And so we try to find who those people are and stick with them. And Jay and I laugh because we should probably start like a human resourcing business as well, but we don't have time. Well, we put 7 people into C-suite positions in the last 9 months, just because we know them. And so when people call us and they're like, do you know someone who's right for this? There's likelihood we've had a conversation in the last year with that person. And the ones that we think are amazing, we want them selfishly to get great jobs because they're going to go make cool things and maybe they'll want to work with us, maybe they won't. But overall, we banked on people. And so I think taking shots when you don't know what the future is going to be for the sort of brass level of the organization is just an inevitable situation that we all are going to find ourselves in.
How's that, Khaki, for an answer?
I think it's a great one. It's helpful. I mean, I think that just diversifying the opportunity across different leaders is what I heard. I mean,
That
we're
was a
just
much more succinct way of saying what I meant. Thank you.
Yeah. And no, that's definitely helpful. I mean, we've just had consistent leadership overturn at the North Face, and I've been presenting this opportunity for about 3 years. And so it's just been a bunch of cheap thrills trying to continue to find the angle to bring people along with the opportunity and to, the opportunity to like be able to ring fence a budget up against a strategy is something that's like ultimately a goal, but unachievable based on the counting and our holding company and just how we could. So I've been just definitely trying to like navigate the one thing that's been consistent at my like 15 years at the North Face. Just been constant change. So thank you guys.
It's so interesting because your org and your role like it's inextricably linked to like stuff that people care about. Like it's just like it's born for content. I would suggest the fact that you have 15-year tenure speaks to that, like somebody there, more than somebody, sees value in what you're doing. But yeah, look, we've been fans of yours for a long time and share your frustration that you probably have to start the sales process over more than you deserve to.
I mean, there's a lot of brands within the VF Corporation there that lend themselves to content, right? You just read about what Vans is doing this week. Interesting. Hey, we have Marcus Peterzell on here. Marcus has a agency called Passion Point Collective that most of you have heard of. Marcus has had his hand in, gosh, I don't know how many brand films, but Marcus, are you there? You want to come on?
Sure thing. Hey, guys.
We have a caller from New York.
We have a caller from hot New York. So the question we get asked the most, but you can tell people are reticent to ask it, they're always nervous, are the numbers. Everyone's like, can we ask you how much your films are? And we're like, sure. We're not going to tell you which client spent, but most people, again, are just nervous about asking the numbers. But we'll always tell people here's the range of budgets that brands have invested in films. What is your response to that when you're talking to a new brand or a conversation or a panel like this, and they're like, from a brand perspective, what kind of investment outside of your fees do they need to make? How do you answer that?
Well, first of all, we try to gain an understanding of their overall marketing budget, where they're spending it, how they're spending it. Like I was saying to Lucia's question, if there's inefficiency somewhere that's going to get burned anyway, then that's a great place to build a bucket for budget. And then we'll build a strategy off of that. And then we have anecdotes at every end of the spectrum. We had the first and second ever brand films accepted to Sundance in back-to-back years, one of which was a $50,000 documentary. And that, by the way, it was Microsoft Bing who was behind that. and they certainly had the money to spend. We also did with them the first ever live interactive show on Hulu. That cost $10 million. We had to buy an ad-free day and then go produce the thing. And so same client, same year, $50,000, amazing, result. $10 million, amazing result. In both cases, they weren't looking to get something into Sundance, so it was, forgive the phrase, but throwaway money. And on the other thing, they really wanted to make cultural impact by doing something major with this emerging class of distributor, now known as a streamer. And in that case, it was worth it to them to buy an ad-free day on Hulu.
Got it. And just a follow up, I know when I first started doing brand films at Omnicom, and we sold some for pretty high figures to Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon, a couple of people were like, "Oh, we should participate. We shouldn't just get agency fees. Why aren't we in the P&L?" And ultimately, Omnicom is like, no. We get paid for our time. That's our model. If we want to be in the Hollywood movie business, then we'll go to Hollywood. We're not there. But curious if you, as an agency, ever participate on the back end.
Well, we're not an agency, and yes. So we work with agencies, and if we were advising the holding companies today, and we may or may not be, we would be advising them to look for back end. And I think we all look while media stocks may not be doing great, they're still doing better than ad agency holding company stocks. So we would suggest that back end at this point for both the brand and all the participants, including the agency. If there's money to be made while also driving brand and business results, everybody should participate. Now, why would you want to throw an asterisk on that? Which is those who make entertainment for a living should always be first in line. So if we've been using Imagine as an example, if we're producing something for a brand with Imagine and there's profit to be made, imagine all of their collaborators whose primary business is entertainment. This is how they feed their families. They're first, then the brand, then the partners, whether it's agency partners or partners like us. So what we don't think is brands should get in the front of, put themselves, just because they might be writing the check, suddenly put themselves in front of those who have to make a living in entertainment just to make a few pennies. It's usually a rounding error on, say, Unilever or P&G's P&L. So two things: you should participate, but participate appropriately.
Yeah, we agree. And although half the time the lawyer fees in negotiating that business point is more than the profit that ever comes back, but stay lucky.
No comment.
Yep.
And hopefully
I don't
there's
mind
no
pissing off
attorney.
executives and movie stars, but I'm not going to piss off lawyers.
Draw the line with lawyers. Hey, I have a question for Lucia. Actually, Jae, it's your question that came up yesterday about how Business Insider is approaching this topic. Why don't you ask it, Jae?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was a how and why, really,
Yeah.
because Business Insider, I'll compliment you in front of you, incredibly legitimate, editorial organization who really seems to have taken a keen interest in the space. So, Lucia and I know each other, but asking publicly why.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I started covering this, entertainment year and a half ago or so, and I just became interested in, the money flow. That's what our readers want to read about, right? So, and within that, you see some of these high profile examples, and this is, I started taking a look at this before Barbie was dominating the headlines, but it's just simply, where's the money coming from? Are there new entities funding entertainment and becoming actors in this space? And yes, and of course, it's all of a piece. It's all part of a continuum. Native advertising, branded content, the soaps. But it's taking a new form. It's taking it's evolving, and when there's money involved and when there's confusion, that always makes for a great story because people are trying to figure it out. People are looking for those success stories. People are looking for, who, what's happening at the platforms, who they're trying to keep up on, who's doing what. So there's, and at the big brands, who's making moves, who's investing, who are they hiring? Are they hiring you guys? Are they hiring somebody else? So there's a scramble going on. And when there's confusion, there's editorial opportunity.
I would add to that, that we're certainly feeling it here at Brand Storytelling, that there's something to this brand entertainment thing, because our events are selling out early on. We're going to have 125 people at Elevate next week and at Sundance talking about this stuff. I'm getting more and more calls coming in about how we get involved and how can we get to your events. So other people are going to stand up and pay attention here too. It's an interesting time. I was just thinking about, our friend Scott Donaton, who wrote Madison and Vine 20 years ago. And you look at what's happened in those 2 decades since he wrote the book on it, arguably it's not very much. You can't point to a whole lot of, I don't know, you guys can, but there's not a long list of brand films that you can point to. What will the next 5-10 years look like? Was this Barbie moment a true moment this year? Are things going to change going forward? What do you guys think?
Well, look, you're right. We do have 20 years of brand films and case studies, but we wish 20 other groups of people did too. The Barbie thing is interesting. Certainly created a moment and a lot of interest. Lucia's point is well taken. This was not a, Barbie inspired journalistic endeavor for her. It was her recognizing that the marketplace was as dynamic and confusing as it is. Barbie's a little frustrating for us because we were around for Transformers. And I think last time I checked, it had done like $16 billion in total revenue if you look at both movie revenue and toy revenue associated with it. And that was dusty IP. There was literally nothing doing. And second time I'll mention someone that I have to say, may he rest in peace, but Brian Goldner, the COO of Hasbro, had the idea to license that dusty IP to Paramount for a whopping $250,000. And then Paramount had to find somebody to produce it. We had a call yesterday with Zoom with Lorenzo de Bonaventura on another project, who was the producer, who raised his hand and was like, I think I could probably figure out what to do with that. Cut to Michael Bay, cut to $16 billion. So this has been happening. It's just, I think we're talking about it more, and hopefully that's because it is accelerating and it is amplifying and there is more of it. But I guess, Rick, the answer to your question will only be known in 5 or 10 years.
I think it's true though, that just based on the pedigree of people that now want to participate, that just by the very nature of the premium level of those who have been very good at entertaining us for a very long time, now wanting to be in the game, we should see better results.
Can I asterisk that one too? Which is there are a few, not a lot, there are a few very good producers, managers who are waving their Oscars around and saying that they're all about brands now. To anybody who watches this, who's thinking about getting into brand entertainment, ask for the case studies. Just because someone is articulate about working with brands and has an Oscar and has an impressive company making real entertainment, that doesn't mean they're good at making brand entertainment. Ask for the case studies, not a verbal one of something that's maybe happening right now that they can't quite tell you about. Make them click play on the video that shows you they've done it before, or know that you are the case study in the making. Know that you are the innovation with them, and make sure that's on the table and say, oh, you haven't done this before, but you're a really good producer who's won an Oscar and who's made these television shows, but you never done. Okay, great. So let's go figure it out together and determine what success looks like. But ask for the case study, because our second best new business line is people who didn't ask that question and got burned.
That's great advice. And I got one more question for you both, and then I'll kick it back to Rick. Just kind of following up on Rick's question, I'll ask it a different way. What do you think we're not talking about now, or what form of branded entertainment are we going to be seeing in a year or so from now that we're not seeing right now, that maybe is being talked about, maybe, being, wished for, but hasn't, it hasn't come to fruition yet, but we're going to be seeing out there in a year or so?
I mean, I think the whole realm of the next generation coming up and how they perceive the virtual world and how they entertain themselves and then now, we haven't really seen that big moment there yet where someone has created something on top of one of those platforms that we put on the same tier as a Barbie in terms of how we speak about it. There's lots of things happening, but things that will be indisputable that we'll point to and be like, if my daughter who turned 13 on Monday, like she's going to have a very different sense of what she thinks is an Oscar award-winning, Emmy award-winning, pick whatever award you want in her life and the value that she'll put against those things. So whether it's video games or social overall, I think we haven't seen the thing yet where a brand has truly done something that has just absolutely blown everyone away that we will all be talking about for the rest of the year.
Yeah, is it more brands on Broadway? Skittles on Broadway is my favorite thing that we had nothing to do with. Would love to see that. It's a great place to exploit IP. And secondly, and maybe we have insight here because we're driving it, but more true brand studios, like what we built at Waffle Iron, like what we're building with Draftline Entertainment at AB InBev, like what we've got with 22 Montana Entertainment at LVMH. Really the overall practice of creating a slate and really getting into the entertainment business, not as a business in the way Apple and Amazon did, but as a real function of marketing, but really taking that overall slate approach, long-term strategic approach. We suspect we're going to see a lot more of that.
Well, listen,
Great.
it's been a terrific conversation. I certainly appreciate the three of you taking the time to do this with us today. It's been great. We'll share this widely after Elevate concludes on July 25th. And for all of you that are on, safe travels to Utah next week. And we will see you there. Like the fireworks, Jay.
Hey, thank you,
So much.
Lucia and Rick. Thank you to Brand Storytelling. You've been a leader for so long, but creating a community of people who are trying to do something here, we really all owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you.
It's our great pleasure and honor to do it, and it's going to be fun watching you guys here for the. We'll have this conversation in 5 years and look back, Jay.
Okay, Lucia, you in?
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Double thumbs.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.